Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're taking a look at a figure that, well, honestly, everyone knows the name.
Oh, absolutely.
It's one of those names that is just woven into the very fabric of history. You know, it's on street signs, it's on schools, it's a federal holiday.
Right, but there is a danger with those massive, iconic names. They tend to become two-dimensional over time.
Yeah, totally.
We know the marble statue, we know the sound bites like the "I have a dream" clip on YouTube.
Yeah.
But we often lose the man himself.
Yeah.
We lose the actual texture of the life that was lived.
Exactly. And, you know, we are talking about Martin Luther King Jr. today. And when we were looking through the source material for this deep dive, specifically this biographical account that lays out his life chronologically, what really struck me wasn't just the famous speeches, it was the timeline.
The pacing of his life is it's absolutely relentless.
It is prodigious. I mean, we're going to get into all of this, but just as a spoiler alert for you listening, the man started college at 15.
15. It really reframes how you view his later actions, I think. You realize you aren't just watching a regular person who kind of stumbled into leadership.
Right.
You're watching a prodigy, someone who was preparing for this, accelerating toward this, almost from birth.
So that is our mission today. We are going to move past the general icon status. We want to unpack the specific chronological facts, the actual dates, and the intense personal costs that are laid out in the source.
The arrests, the bombings.
The sheer physical danger, all of it.
And we're going to trace the evolution of his philosophy. Because as the text points out, it wasn't static. It grew. It changed.
Yeah.
From the classrooms in Atlanta to a jail cell in Birmingham and finally, tragically, to a motel balcony in Memphis.
It is a heavy journey, definitely, but a necessary one. So we've got the roadmap set. We'll start with that accelerated education down in Atlanta, move through this really bizarre forceful release incident in Albany.
Oh, we definitely have to talk about that in detail.
Yeah, it's such a weird story. Then we'll connect the dots to Gandhi in India, and finally look at those final moments in Memphis.
Let's dive in.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning. Part 1, the foundations.
January 15th, 1929, Atlanta, Georgia.
That's the date. And our source makes a point to describe the family dynamic right away, because he wasn't just born into a void, you know? He was born into a very specific context.
Right. His father, Martin Luther King Sr., was a pastor.
A pastor, exactly.
And his mother, Alberta Williams King, she was an accomplished organist and a choir leader.
And he had 2 siblings. But let's just pause on the parents for a second. You have a pastor father and a musician mother.
It's basically the perfect incubator for what was to come, isn't it?
It really is.
If you think about King's speaking style later on, the cadence, the rhythm, the way he could just hold an entire audience, it makes perfect sense that he grew up in a house filled with both high-level theology and music.
Yeah, it's almost like he was genetically engineered for oratory. You have the pulpit and the choir right there in the living room every single day.
Precisely. The environment was steeped in faith and performance, but in the best, most authentic sense of the word. The ability to move people emotionally was essentially the family business.
But here is where it gets really interesting for me, the young prodigy aspect we teased earlier.
Oh, yeah.
The source mentions he went to Booker T. Washington High School, which is, you know, normal enough. But then he starts his college education at Morehouse College at age 15.
At 15 years old.
I mean, let's unpack that for a second. What were you doing at 15?
Because I was trying to figure out how to get my learner's permit, maybe playing video games.
Right.
I certainly wasn't watching onto a college campus to take degree-level classes.
It speaks to just an immense intellectual maturity. Most 15-year-olds are grappling with high school social dynamics, you know, like who sits where at lunch.
But King was grappling with sociology. It suggests that his capacity to process really complex information was active very, very early on.
And it wasn't just a show up and take a class for fun situation. He actually got the degree, a sociology degree from Morehouse.
And think about what sociology actually is. It's the study of society, of structure, of how different groups interact.
Right.
So before he even steps into the pulpit as a leader, he has this strict academic framework for understanding exactly why society looks the way it does.
He has the vocabulary for it. But he didn't stop there. The academic journey this guy went on is honestly exhausting just to read about. It's a marathon.
It really is. Because after Morehouse, he goes up to Crozer Seminary.
For a divinity degree.
Exactly. And
he heads to Boston University for a doctorate in theology.
So we aren't just talking about a charismatic preacher here. We are talking about Dr. King, a man with a sociology degree, a divinity degree, and a doctorate in theology.
That's a crucial distinction that the source material really highlights. His leadership wasn't just based on raw emotional appeal, it was grounded in rigorous academic study.
He understood social structures from sociology, and he understood moral philosophy from his theology degrees. He was intellectually overqualified for almost any room he walked into.
It paints a picture of someone who deliberately armed himself with knowledge before he ever entered the fight. He built a toolkit.
Exactly. And while he is racking up all these degrees, real life is happening too. The source introduces us to his major partnership during this time.
Coretta Scott.
Right. They were married June 18, 1953.
And the text describes her as an accomplished singer and a civil rights activist in her own right.
That's such an important detail to highlight. She wasn't just the wife standing quietly in the background. She was a partner in the movement, an activist from the jump, and a singer, which is interesting, much like his mother.
Oh, wow. That is an interesting connection. I totally missed that when I was reading. So again, music and activism are just completely intertwined in the women in his life.
It definitely seems to be a recurring theme, and they eventually had 4 children together. So by 1953, let's just look at the scoreboard here.
Let's do it.
He's got the degrees, he's got the doctorate, he's got the wife, he's 24 years old.
And he's completely ready to work. Which brings us to part 2, the Montgomery Spark. The year is 1954.
He takes his first posting. He joins the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama as pastor.
Imagine that for a second. You're 25 years old, fresh out of Boston University with your doctorate, and you land in Montgomery. And he doesn't just stick to the pulpit either. The source notes he immediately became a member of the executive committee of the NAACP.
The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. He is stepping right into the organizational structure of civil rights.
Yeah.
He's not waiting on the sidelines to get settled or figure out the local politics.
He just jumps in, and then history happens. The bus boycott.
1955 to 1956. This is the moment where all those academic theories finally meet the pavement.
The source calls this his first major civil rights action. And the stakes, I think we often forget how dangerous this was immediately.
Oh, absolutely.
We have this sanitized, sort of textbook version of history where everyone just held hands and marched. But the source is brutal here about the realities.
It wasn't just a polite debate. The source is very clear about the personal cost. It says Martin was arrested.
And worse than that, his house was bombed.
Let's just sit with that for a moment.
Yeah.
You are in your mid-20s, you have a very young family, and someone throws an actual bomb at your house.
That is the reality of what leadership meant in this context. It wasn't just, giving inspiring speeches. It was putting your life and your family's safety directly in the line of fire. It was domestic terrorism.
And yet, despite the arrest, despite the literal bombing of his home, the source says, quote, Martin prevailed.
Segregation on the Montgomery buses came to an end.
It was a monumental victory, and it proved that the strategy, this specific combination of an organized economic boycott and nonviolent resistance, actually worked in the real world.
It validated the theory he had been studying for years.
Yes, exactly.
So he wins in Montgomery, he's survived the bombing, he's officially on the map as a national figure. Now we move to part 3, organization and global influence. We're in the late 50s now.
1957, to be precise. This is when the actual infrastructure of the movement really gets built.
Yeah.
The Southern Christian Leadership Conference, or the SCLC, is established.
And King is elected president, a position the source notes he held for the rest of his life until his death.
This consolidates the movement. It's not just scattered local protests anymore. It's a formal organization. It has a letterhead, it has a hierarchy, it has a clear strategy, and they immediately go national.
The text describes a prayer pilgrimage for freedom at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., and this is where he gives his first major national speech.
Titled, Give Us the Ballot.
That title really stuck out to me when I read it. Give us the ballot.
It's incredibly specific, isn't it?
He's not asking for freedom in some vague, abstract way.
No, not at all. He's laser focused on voting rights here. He's not just asking for general kindness or tolerance. He's asking for hard political power.
Right.
He's saying, give us the tool we actually need to change the laws ourselves. It shows that sociologist's brain working again. He knows exactly where the levers of power are located.
It shows a highly strategic mind. He knows that without the vote, everything else they achieve is fragile. But then, in 1959, he takes a trip that seems to change everything internally for him.
The trip to India.
Yeah, he travels all the way to India to visit Mahatma Gandhi's place.
Now, obviously, Gandhi had been assassinated by this point, but his legacy and his teachings were completely palpable there. And the source is very explicit about this visit. It says this trip had a huge impact on King.
It says he became more committed to nonviolence.
That's the key phrase right there. More committed.
Which implies there was a deeper level to unlock, right? Like he was already committed, but this took it further.
Exactly. Before this trip, nonviolence might have been seen primarily as a tactic, a practical way to win a specific battle, like the bus boycott, because you simply don't have the weapons or the numbers to fight a physical war.
A strategy born out of necessity.
Right. But after visiting India, after really immersing himself in Gandhi's world and philosophy, it seems to have solidified into a comprehensive worldview, a strict moral imperative.
It's like he went to the source code of nonviolent resistance and downloaded the major upgrade.
That's a great way to put it. He realized that his struggle in the American South was deeply connected to a much broader, global, human struggle against oppression. It wasn't just local Montgomery politics anymore. It was a profound spiritual philosophy.
So he comes back from India completely fired up and refocused. And now we are entering the 1960s, part 4, the sit-ins and escalation.
Things start moving very fast here. February 1960.
The source mentions African-American students start nonviolent sit-ins in Greensboro, North Carolina.
This is a crucial pivot for the civil rights era. It's not just King leading from the top down anymore. It's the students.
Yeah.
It's organic grassroots action. It's the next generation stepping up.
And it spreads like wildfire. The source says the movement quickly expanded to several other cities. By August of that same year, lunch counters were desegregated in 27 cities.
That is just rapid, undeniable progress. That's the power of direct action when it's coordinated. But of course, that kind of rapid progress also brought increased friction and pushback.
Right. King gets involved personally. And the legal battles start getting, well, messy. The source details an incident where King refuses to move out of a white area.
He's arrested along with 36 other people.
But then it gets highly legalistic and manipulative. He was released, but then the authorities accused him of violating probation on a previous traffic conviction.
Was that classic harassment tactic used by local governments at the time? You use the smallest, most petty administrative rule, like a minor traffic ticket, to try and lock up the leader.
Right.
They couldn't get him on the big stuff, so they went for the technicalities to keep him off the streets.
But the weirdest legal moment, and we have to talk about this because the phrasing in the source is so specific, happens in Albany in 1962.
The forceful release.
Yes. Okay, so let's lay this out. King returns to Albany in July 1962. He's arrested again. But this time, he refuses bail. He actively wants to stay in jail to make a point.
Which is standard civil rights strategy for the time. You fill up the jails, make the local justice system completely collapse under the sheer weight of the arrests.
And create a media circus while you're at it.
Exactly. Keep the cameras on the injustice.
But the source says the police chief discreetly arranged his bail, and he was, quote, forcefully released.
You really have to think about that phrasing.
Yeah.
Forcefully released.
Yeah.
Usually, you are forcefully arrested.
Right.
But here, the police are literally kicking him out of jail against his own will.
So why would a segregationist police chief want to let Martin Luther King Jr. go?
It really shows the complex cat and mouse game they were playing. The police chief in Albany realized that keeping King in a jail cell gave King immense power. It created a focal point for the movement.
It created a martyr.
Precisely. If King is suffering in a hot cell, the national news cameras are parked right outside. The pressure builds.
So by kicking him out?
You diffuse the tension immediately. You deny him the moral high ground of suffering for the cause. It's a highly cynical move, but from a purely tactical standpoint, a smart one by the police chief.
And the fact that the source says it was done discreetly suggests they knew exactly what they were doing. They were actively trying to deny him his platform without making a big scene.
They just wanted him gone and out of the headlines.
But they couldn't get rid of him that easily, because the very next year, 1963, is, well, it's the big one, part 5, Birmingham and the Dream.
April 1963, the SCLC begins a massive campaign in Birmingham, Alabama.
And the source specifically notes this campaign was against racial segregation and economic injustice.
That economic piece is so often overlooked in the popular narrative, but it's right there in the text. They were fighting for fair jobs and wages just as much as they were fighting for basic dignity and desegregation.
And on April 12th, King is arrested yet again, put in the Birmingham jail.
And the conditions described in the source are just chilling. It calls them unusually harsh.
Which, honestly, makes what he produced while sitting in there even more incredible. This is where he writes the famous letter from Birmingham City Jail.
Arguably one of the most important documents in all of American history.
The source highlights a key theme from that letter: why we cannot wait.
That phrase alone, why we cannot wait, it strikes directly at the heart of the main criticism he was facing at the time.
Because he wasn't just getting criticized by his enemies.
No, exactly.
Right.
You have to remember, he wasn't just writing this letter to the KKK or the segregationist politicians. He was writing to the white moderates, the clergy members, the people who said, we agree with your goals, but slow down. You're causing too much trouble. It takes time.
And he's sitting in these unusually harsh jail conditions saying, no, we are done waiting.
It's that same intense urgency again. The exact same urgency of a 15-year-old deciding to start college. He is constantly pushing the timeline forward. He felt the clock ticking.
And that massive push leads directly to the March on Washington.
The scale of which is just staggering. Over 250,000 people.
And we all know the speech from that day. I have a dream. The source rightly calls it one of the most famous speeches in history. But what I really liked about doing this deep dive is that the source actually lists the specific demands of the march. Because it wasn't just a big pep rally.
Right. It wasn't just a vague gathering where people said, we want freedom. They had a concrete list of policy goals.
The source lists them clearly. First, an end to segregation in public schools.
Check. A very clear legislative goal.
Second, protection from police abuse.
Which was a huge life or death issue then, and obviously something that remains deeply relevant.
And third, laws preventing discrimination in employment.
Jobs. There's that economic angle, once again.
So they weren't just marching for good vibes or abstract concepts. They were marching for schools, physical safety, and jobs.
And the pressure worked. The source notes that the march was a great success. It built the political capital necessary, and the Civil Rights Act was passed a year later in 1964.
It's an incredible high point in the timeline. But the story doesn't end in 1964. We have to move to the final chapter outlined in our text, Part 6, The Final Days, 1968.
The whole tone of the narrative really shifts here. We move geographically to Memphis, Tennessee.
March 29th, 1968. He travels to Memphis. And again, if you look at the specific cause he's championing, the source says he was there in support of a strike held by, quote, black sanitary public works employees.
Sanitation workers. The garbage collectors.
It really emphasizes how his focus was broadening in his final years. He was fighting for the fundamental dignity of labor, for the guys doing the hardest, most overlooked jobs, picking up the trash.
It connects right back to that economic injustice theme from the Birmingham campaign. Yeah. By 1968, King is deeply entrenched in the struggle for economic rights. He realized you simply cannot have true civil rights without economic rights.
And then comes a prophetic moment. April 3rd, 1968, he gives his last speech.
I've been to the mountaintop.
It sends shivers down your spine when you read about it, knowing what happened the very next day.
It really does. Because he almost speaks as if he knows his time is up. Like he knows he won't physically make it to the promised land with the rest of the movement.
And then the timeline provided by the source for the next day, April 4th, 1968, it is brutal in its precision.
Let's walk through it, as difficult as it is.
It's April 4th. He's standing out on a motel balcony in Memphis.
The text notes the exact time, 6:01 p.m.
He is shot by a man the source describes as a white fanatic.
6:01 p.m., just 1 minute past the hour.
He was immediately taken to St. Joseph's Hospital for emergency surgery.
But it was too late. The source records that he died at 7:05 p.m.
An hour and 4 minutes later, he was gone.
And then the source drops the number that always stops me in my tracks whenever I read about his life.
His age.
He was only 39 years old.
39. I mean,
yeah.
We started this whole conversation talking about him starting college at 15. And his entire life ends at 39.
It's a tragically short window of time. In just 24 years from walking onto the Morehouse campus as a teenager to standing on that balcony in Memphis, he essentially reshaped the world.
It puts the prodigy aspect in a really heartbreaking light, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He lived fast. He worked incredibly fast. Maybe because on some unconscious level, he knew he didn't have much time.
Going back to that phrase from the Birmingham jail.
Yeah.
Why we cannot wait.
Exactly. He quite literally couldn't wait. He didn't have the decades that other leaders get.
You know, despite the overwhelming tragedy of that final timeline in 1968, I appreciate that the source chooses to end on his philosophy rather than just the assassination. It quotes him directly.
Yeah, the quote is, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that."
It is the perfect synthesis of his entire life's work. From the rigorous theology doctorate to the practical nonviolence he learned from Gandhi in India. He fundamentally believed that you cannot fight the enemy using the enemy's tools.
You have to bring the complete opposite force to the table.
Right. Light against darkness, love against hate.
It's such a simple concept to say out loud, but as we've seen in this deep dive, actually applying it, living it out while people are bombing your house and the police are throwing you in unusually harsh jail cells is incredibly difficult.
That's the real takeaway for me. It wasn't just a nice poetic quote for a greeting card. It was a hardcore battle strategy that cost him absolutely everything.
It was a supreme discipline.
Precisely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left thinking a lot about that profound urgency, the why we cannot wait sentiment.
It's a really powerful thought to leave with. We so often look back at civil rights history and we think the change was just inevitable, like society was naturally progressing. But when you actually look at the details of King's life, the constant stress, the repeated arrests, the sheer physical exhaustion of constant movement, you realize that change isn't inevitable at all. It is forced. It's dragged into existence by people who absolutely refuse to wait for things to just naturally get better.
And by people who are willing to pay the ultimate personal price to push that timeline forward. And it makes you wonder about today, how the urgency expressed back then in Birmingham compares to the patience that is so often demanded of activists right now. People are still told to wait, to slow down.
Indeed. The parallels are definitely there if you look for them.
Well, that is a lot to process for one session. A sociology degree at 15, a global movement based on nonviolence, and a legacy that still completely defines us, all packed into just 39 years.
The profoundly impactful life and a deep dive that was well worth taking today.
Absolutely. Thank you all for listening to this deep dive into the life and timeline of Martin Luther King Jr. We'll catch you next time.